It is late at night and you are tired. Your eyes feel heavy, but your mind is restless. You keep thinking about money. You worked hard this week, but when you checked your account, the balance looked smaller than you hoped. Bills are waiting. The rent is due soon. The grocery list is longer than your paycheck feels. You wonder why it seems like no matter how much you earn, the feeling of being broke never goes away. This video is here to help you with that heavy feeling. For the next 2 hours, you will hear a gentle story about money. Not about how to get rich, not about quick tricks, but about the real reasons so many people feel broke even when they are trying their best. You will hear simple truths backed by real facts, but told in a soft way that lets your body rest as you listen. By the end of this video, you will understand why living paycheck to paycheck is so common. You will hear why debt feels like a heavy backpack you cannot put down. You will see why costs rise faster than paychecks, and why it is not your fault if you feel stuck. Most importantly, you will hear small steps that bring calm, small changes that help in new ways of looking at money that bring peace instead of shame. You should stay with this story until the end because each part connects to the next. The first chapters explore the pain, the shame, and the fear around money. The middle chapters reveal how those feelings formed, how they follow us from childhood, and why they shape our choices as adults. The final chapters show the healing side, the gentle steps, the simple habits, and the calmer mindsets that make money feel safer. Each part is designed to make you feel lighter, less alone, and more at peace with your financial life. You will also hear stories of everyday people, like you, who faced the same worries. You will hear about bills left unopened on the table, about nights when the card was declined, about mornings when shame made someone say no to friends because they could not afford to go out. These are real stories, told softly, so you feel understood. Then you will also hear what helped them move forward, one step at a time, so you know that change is possible. This video is not about numbers on a page. It is about the emotions that live under those numbers. It is about the fear that keeps you up at night, the guilt that makes you avoid your statements, and the stress that weighs on your body. It is also about the relief that comes when you realize you are not failing. You are simply human in a system that makes money hard. By staying until the end, you will feel that relief too. You will hear about the myths that keep people stuck. Myths like if you just stopped buying coffee, you would be fine, or if you budgeted harder, you would not struggle. You will learn why those myths are unfair, why they ignore the truth, and how believing them adds unnecessary shame. Then you will hear the real truths, that costs have risen faster than wages, that debt often comes from covering needs, not wants, and that shame is not a solution. These truths will free you from blame and open the way for kinder choices. As you listen, notice how your body responds. The tone of this story is soft for a reason. Money stress lives in your nervous system. It makes your chest feel tight, your stomach twist, your mind race. This story is built to quiet that response. Each paragraph is paced for rest. The rhythm is slow enough to calm your breath, but steady enough to keep your mind gently engaged. That balance helps you learn without feeling pressured. It helps you fall asleep without feeling like you are wasting time. The value of staying through this video is not only in what you will learn about money, it is in what you will feel. You will feel seen, heard, and comforted. You will feel calmer about your own struggles. You will feel less alone in your journey. And as your body drifts toward rest, your mind will still be taking in the lessons. That small steps matter, that shame does not help, that peace with money is possible even before you are rich. Over the course of the story, you will hear about 3 main shifts. First, the shift from fear to understanding. Second, the shift from shame to acceptance. Third, the shift from chaos to gentle action. These are the gifts waiting at the end of this video. They are the reason to keep listening, even if you fall asleep along the way. Your brain will still take them in. And when you wake, you may feel a little lighter, a little clearer, a little more ready. The chapters will flow like a journey. The early ones will take you through the fog, where money feels confusing, heavy, and endless. Then we will move to the wake-up moments, the points where something changes, where a new idea sparks, where a different choice becomes possible. Finally, we will enter the redesigned chapters, where money begins to feel like a friend instead of an enemy, where small rituals bring calm, and where the story ends in peace. Each chapter is carefully written to help you rest. Each one balances emotion with fact, story with truth, calm with insight. By the end, you will know why you have felt broke for so long. and you will also know how to start healing that feeling. Not overnight, not all at once, but in gentle steps that fit into your real life. So stay with me in this story. Let your body sink into the bed, let your eyes grow heavy, and let your mind follow along. You will hear about money in a way you have never heard before. Simple, soft, and human. A story that heals while you sleep. And when you are ready, we will begin with the first chapter. It is called Midnight Worries and Empty Wallets. It starts in the quiet of night when the weight of money feels heaviest. But what begins there does not end there. The story carries forward, and so will you. The clock on the wall ticks softly. It is after midnight, and the room is quiet, but your thoughts are loud. You lie awake in bed, the glow of your phone screen still shining on your face. You opened your banking app a few minutes ago, and the number staring back at you feels smaller than the weight in your chest. There is not enough for the bills that are waiting. Payday is days away. The rent will be due soon, and the fridge is almost empty. You place the phone on your chest and stare into the dark. Your body feels heavy, but your mind will not rest. Thoughts circle in loops. What if the payment bounces? What if the card gets declined again? What if you need gas for the car, or groceries for the week, or medicine if you get sick? Each thought feels like a stone dropping into water, rippling wider and wider until it fills every corner of your night. This feeling is not strange or rare. Millions of people across the country know this same worry. Surveys show that more than half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That includes people earning modest incomes, but also people earning six figures. Even households with good jobs and steady paychecks often feel this same financial strain. It is a reminder that the feeling of being broke is not always about how much you earn, but about the constant pressure of bills, rising costs, and unexpected needs. Still, in the quiet of your own bedroom, that knowledge does not stop the anxiety. You feel alone with the numbers, alone with the weight, alone with the story you tell yourself. The story might sound like this: why can't I get it together? Why do I always end up here? What am I doing wrong? These questions do not bring answers. They bring shame. They make you believe the balance in your account says something about your worth as a person. But it does not. The truth is simple. Money stress is heavy because money is tied to survival. It is not about luxury. It is about food, shelter, safety, and dignity. When money feels scarce, your nervous system reacts as if your life is at risk. Your heart beats faster, your body holds tension, your sleep slips away. These are natural responses, not signs of weakness. If you lie awake worrying about bills, it does not mean you failed. It means your body is sounding an alarm trying to protect you. Think back to your earliest memories of money. Maybe you watched a parent sigh as they paid bills at the kitchen table. Maybe you heard arguments about credit cards or rent. Maybe you noticed how one paycheck never seemed to stretch to the next. These memories settle deep inside. They teach you that money is fragile, that it disappears quickly, that it is tied to stress and conflict. Now, years later, the same feelings come alive in your own life. They follow you into the night and whisper that there will never be enough. Tonight, as you lie awake, you feel that whisper. You feel the shadow of scarcity. It makes each choice feel critical. Should you buy groceries tomorrow or wait? Should you pay the utility bill now or hold off? Each small decision feels enormous, as if one wrong step will send everything crashing down. Living in this state feels like walking across a tightrope with no net below. You move carefully, but the fear of falling never leaves. But here is a quiet truth. You are not falling. You are balancing, and balancing is hard work. It explains why you are tired all the time, why rest feels far away. It takes so much energy to hold steady when every dollar matters, when every choice feels loaded. Your exhaustion is not laziness. It is the cost of living in survival mode for too long. Still, there is another truth hidden inside the struggle. If living paycheck to paycheck is this common, if it affects people across incomes and backgrounds, then the problem is not only individual, it is systemic. The cost of food, housing, transportation, and medical care has risen faster than wages for years. Even people doing everything right find themselves short. The system asks too much, and individuals carry the blame. Knowing this does not solve the stress, but it softens the shame. It shifts the story from, "I am failing" to, "This is difficult," and many are carrying the same weight. In this chapter, you hear the pain of being broke at midnight. You feel the loneliness, the shame, and the fear. But you also hear the truth that these feelings are shared. You hear that millions experience the same sleepless nights. You hear that the system is heavy, and you are not the only one struggling under its weight. This is the first step toward healing, seeing the truth clearly without shame. Close your eyes now if they are not already closed. Feel the heaviness of your body against the bed. Let the truth settle gently inside you. The truth is that you are tired because you carry a heavy load. The truth is that your worth is not measured by the balance in your account. The truth is that the fear you feel is your body's natural way of trying to keep you safe. As you breathe, notice that even in the middle of financial stress, there is space for rest. The bills will wait until morning. The thoughts will still be there tomorrow. For now, you can let go. You can let the story pause. You can let your body rest, even if your mind wants to keep running. Each breath is an act of care. Each moment of rest is a small step toward healing. The night is long, but this story is longer. In the chapters ahead, you will hear more about the hidden shame under the bills, the fear that follows in the grocery store, the weight of debt, and the disillusionment of a generation told to work hard and expect stability. You will also hear about relief, small wins, gentle steps, and the soft rituals that bring peace. Each chapter will carry you forward. Each one will bring more calm, more understanding, more compassion for yourself. For now, let this first chapter close with a question. You know the pain of midnight worries and empty wallets. You know the restless nights and the heavy chest. But what happens when the morning comes? When the bills on the table catch your eye and shame begins to whisper? What happens when you have to face the hidden weight under the surface? That is where we will go next. The morning light filters in through the blinds, soft but uninvited. You walk into the kitchen and see the bills still resting on the table where you left them last night. Envelopes, some white, some yellow, some marked with warnings in red. You do not open them right away. You pour coffee first, holding the cup with both hands as if the warmth could shield you from the weight waiting inside those envelopes. You know what is in them? Numbers, balances, due dates, maybe even threats. But opening them feels like opening a door you are not ready to face. So they sit there, quietly reminding you of your unfinished battles. Each unopened bill is like a voice whispering, you are falling behind. Even though you know avoiding them will not make them disappear, you delay, hoping the silence will feel safer than the truth. This is how shame works. It grows in the quiet, in the secrecy, in the piles we ignore. Many people live with this same pattern. Studies show that a large share of Americans delay opening bills or checking statements. 13% admit to hiding debt from their loved ones. 7% try to ignore their debt completely. These numbers show how shame is not rare. It is woven into the way many of us live with money. You sip your coffee and try to shake off the feeling, but shame lingers. A friend invites you out for the weekend, maybe dinner or a small trip, and you laugh and say you are busy. The truth is, you cannot afford it. But saying no because of money feels embarrassing, so you hide it under excuses. Shame makes you act like you are fine when you are not. It makes you smile when you want to cry. It makes you carry a secret burden while pretending everything is under control. Shame is different from guilt. Guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a mistake. Guilt points to an action, but shame points to the self. That is why shame cuts so deep. When you look at the pile of bills, guilt might say, I should have paid these earlier. Shame says, I am bad with money. I will never get this right. That difference keeps people stuck. Guilt can motivate change. Shame keeps people silent. The silence is dangerous because money problems often need attention to improve. A bill ignored gathers late fees. A balance grows interest. A small problem swells into a larger one. Yet shame convinces you to avoid looking, to delay, to stay in the dark. This is how a cycle forms. The more you avoid, the worse the problem grows, and the worse the shame becomes. But here is an important truth. Struggling with money does not mean you are broken. It does not mean you are irresponsible or lazy. Experts say that negative emotions like fear, guilt, and shame often come from a lack of financial knowledge. Most people were never taught how to handle money. Schools rarely cover it. Families often keep it secret. You enter adulthood expected to manage rent, credit cards, loans, and savings without ever having been shown how. Shame thrives in that gap between what you were expected to know and what you were taught. Think about how many times you have heard money called a private matter. Think about how many people avoid discussing their salaries, their debts, their struggles. This culture of secrecy feeds shame. It tells you that money problems are your fault, your failure, something to be hidden. But if everyone is hiding, then no one sees how common the struggle is. The secrecy makes you think you are alone, even when millions are carrying the same load. You look at the mirror while sipping your coffee. The tired eyes looking back tell a story of someone who tries hard but feels behind. That story is not about laziness or lack of care. It is about a system that demands silence and punishes mistakes. Shame adds another layer of weight to an already heavy load. Instead of being free to ask for help or admit you are struggling, you push the feelings down and pretend. But imagine, softly, what would happen if you opened one of those envelopes without judgment? If you said to yourself, "This is a number, not a verdict." If you reminded yourself, "My worth is not tied to this bill," that small act can break the cycle. Naming the problem reduces its power. Bringing it into the light weakens shame. Even if the number is large, even if the deadline is near, looking at it calmly is the first act of control. It is important to notice that shame often comes with physical weight. Your stomach twists, your chest feels tight, you avoid calls from numbers you do not recognize. Worried it might be a collector? These physical responses are real. They are your body showing how heavy shame feels. You are not imagining it. Financial therapists say that unprocessed shame around money often shows up as anxiety, headaches, and even sleeplessness. It is not all in your head. It lives in your body too. Shame also makes people compare themselves to others. You scroll through social media and see friends on vacations, buying homes, upgrading cars. Shame whispers that you are behind, that you are failing. What you do not see is their bills, their debts, their worries. Many are in the same boat, but hiding it as well. Comparison feeds shame because it is built on incomplete stories. You only see the surface, not the struggles beneath. So what can you do when shame knocks in the morning with the bills? You breathe. You remind yourself that the bills are paper, not punishment. You remind yourself that hiding does not make them smaller. You remind yourself that millions of people are facing the same table, the same envelopes, the same feelings. And you tell yourself that shame does not solve money problems. Kindness does. Honesty does. Small steps do. As the coffee cools and the morning moves forward, the bills remain on the table. You may not open them all today. That is all right. Healing does not mean doing everything at once. It means taking one step, maybe opening one envelope, maybe making one payment, maybe calling one person you trust and saying, "I am struggling and I need support." These small actions break the silence. They let the light in. They weaken shame. By the end of this chapter, the table is the same. The bills are the same, but something has shifted inside you. You understand that shame is not the truth. Shame is a story you were told. The truth is that financial struggles are common. The truth is that avoidance grows the problem. The truth is that compassion makes space for change. As the day moves forward, you carry these truths with you. Shame will return, as it always does, but you now have a different response. You can pause, you can name it, you can remind yourself that you are not the problem. The problem is the weight of bills and the silence around them. The problem is the system that makes life expensive and money confusing. You are not broken. You are human and you are learning. And as the evening comes, the table remains. The bills are still there, but you are beginning to see them differently. Less as proof of failure, more as tasks waiting for action. Less as judgments, more as numbers. The shame still whispers, but the voice is quieter than before. You sip another cup of tea this time, and you feel a small sense of strength return. But what happens when shame meets scarcity in daily life? What happens when you are in the grocery store, calculator in hand, and every choice feels like survival? That is where we will go next. The afternoon sun slips through the windows of a small grocery store. You push a cart slowly down the aisles, a quiet weight pressing against your chest. In one hand, your phone is open to the calculator. In the other, you hold a short list written carefully so you do not forget. Each step feels heavier than it should, because every item you place in the cart has to be weighed against what is left in your account. You pause at the shelves, milk or cereal, rice or vegetables. The choices seem ordinary to others walking by, but to you they feel like big decisions. Every dollar matters. Every wrong step means less for later. A shadow follows you as you shop, whispering that there will never be enough. That shadow is scarcity, and it changes how you see everything. Scarcity is not only about numbers, it is about how those numbers shape your mind. Psychologists say that scarcity creates tunnel vision. It narrows your focus to the immediate need, leaving less space for long-term thinking. You focus so much on stretching this paycheck that saving for the future feels impossible. You worry so much about groceries today that you cannot think about building security for tomorrow. This is how scarcity steals mental energy. The shadow of scarcity makes even small expenses feel overwhelming. A box of cereal is not just breakfast. It is a reminder that your budget is fragile. A bag of apples is not only fruit, it is a question. Will this throw off the rest of the week? Living like this drains you, not because you are careless, but because every choice feels like survival. This constant pressure wears down your body and your mind. Research shows that scarcity affects decision-making in ways people do not always see. When your mind is busy solving immediate problems, it has less energy for careful planning. That is why someone who feels broke may make short-term choices that create long-term stress. It is not because they are irresponsible. It is because their brain is focused on getting through today. This is not a flaw. It is a survival response. You continue down the aisle, crossing off items. Some things you planned to buy, you leave behind. You tell yourself you will come back for them later, but you know later might not come. At the register, you put items on the belt carefully. You watch the numbers rise on the screen. Your heart beats faster as the total grows closer to the balance you know is in your account. When the payment goes through, there is relief, but it is not a lasting relief. It is a small breath before the shadow returns, because you know the cycle will begin again soon. Another paycheck, another list, another calculation. Scarcity makes life feel like a loop where you walk the same aisles, make the same trade-offs, and feel the same weight. But here is a quiet truth to hold. The shadow of scarcity is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you are trying. It is proof that you are working hard to stretch what you have, even when the numbers feel thin. Scarcity is not a character flaw. It is a natural reaction to living with limits. Knowing this softens the judgment you place on yourself. Think about the quick fixes scarcity often pushes you toward. Payday loans, credit cards, skipping one bill to pay another. These choices may add more stress later, but in the moment, they feel like relief. That is what scarcity does. It makes the present so heavy that you reach for anything that eases the weight. This is not failure, this is survival. But survival alone is exhausting. You step outside the store, groceries in hand, and feel the sun on your skin. The shadow is still there, but you take a deep breath. You remind yourself that this cycle, though heavy, is not endless. Change begins with small acts of awareness, noticing how scarcity shapes your thoughts, naming the shadow when it follows you, reminding yourself that you are not alone in carrying it. Scarcity also brings isolation. You may feel embarrassed to talk about the choices you make. You may avoid telling friends that you skipped a meal out because you needed gas money. You may hide the truth from family because you do not want to worry them, but millions are making the same choices. Millions are standing in grocery aisles, calculators in hand, hearts racing as totals rise. The silence makes you feel isolated, but the reality is shared. As the day ends, you unpack your groceries. You notice how the shadow still lingers, even as the fridge looks a little fuller. That is what scarcity does. It is not only about what you have in your kitchen, it is about the story scarcity tells you that no matter what, it will never be enough. That story keeps you awake at night. That story makes you doubt yourself. But stories can be rewritten. The truth is that scarcity does not define your entire life. It defines moments. It shapes certain choices. But you are more than those choices. You are more than the groceries you put back, or the bills you delay, or the debts you carry. You are also someone who cares, who tries, who balances, who survives. That truth deserves to be remembered, even when the shadow feels heavy. As you sit with these thoughts, you may feel the exhaustion of scarcity in your body. Your shoulders tense, your stomach knots, your breath feels shallow. Notice it. Place a hand on your chest and take a deeper breath. Remind yourself, this is the body's response to pressure, not a sign of weakness. Your body is trying to protect you. You can thank it. You can let it soften. Scarcity will return tomorrow and the next day until things shift. But tonight you have named it. You have seen how it follows you through the aisles, how it whispers in your ear, how it shapes your choices. By naming it, you have already taken the first step toward loosening its grip. Scarcity thrives in the dark. Awareness brings it into the light. The chapter closes with a quiet question. You have felt the shadow in the store, in the choices, in the cycle. But what happens when rising costs themselves push harder than any budget? What happens when the tide of expenses grows faster than your paycheck? No matter how carefully you plan, that is where we will go next. The sun dips low as you drive home from work. You glance at the fuel gauge and see the needle hovering near empty. You sigh because filling the tank used to feel routine. Now it feels like another test. You know the cost will eat away at the little left in your account. The drive feels longer because of that wait. You pull into the gas station and watch the numbers climb on the screen. Each click of the pump feels heavier than the last. You remember when the same tank cost less, and you wonder why it feels harder every year. You think of rent due next week, the grocery bill waiting, and how your paycheck never seems to stretch as far as it once did. This is the reality for millions. Since 2019, the cost of basic needs has risen faster than incomes. Median household income grew about 21%, but the cost of food climbed 27%. Housing rose 26%. Transportation costs jumped 28%. The math shows what you already feel. Life has become more expensive, and paychecks have not kept pace. When costs rise faster than income, even small expenses feel like waves. You tread water, but each surge pulls you down a little more. Rent increases take bigger bites. Grocery bags seem lighter, though receipts grow longer. Energy bills climb with each season. You are not failing. You are swimming against a tide that is rising higher than before. This pressure is not about one bad choice. It is about systems that make stability harder to reach. Millennials and Gen Z were told education was the key to a good job. Many took on debt to earn degrees. The result is a generation carrying weight heavier than the ones before. You pull into your driveway with less fuel and less money. At home, you open the fridge and make dinner with what is left. The thought comes again. Why does it feel like no matter how much I work, it is never enough? That thought is not unique. Surveys show that 57% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Even 42% of people earning over $100,000 report the same. Rising costs do not spare anyone. Energy must be used. Medical bills arrive whether you are ready or not. These are not luxuries, they are survival. When survival itself feels unaffordable, the emotional toll is enormous. It creates stress that follows you into the night, into your sleep, into your body. Stress from rising costs does not only stay in your wallet, it moves into your health. Studies link financial stress to higher anxiety, depression, and even physical symptoms like headaches and poor sleep. Your body carries what your paycheck cannot cover. This is why you feel tired even after a full night's rest. The strain of survival weighs more than it seems. At the end of the day, you sort through the mail. A rent increase notice, a utility bill higher than last month, a medical statement you were not expecting. You place them on the table and feel your chest tighten. You wonder how others manage. You remind yourself that statistics prove you are not alone. Yet the knowledge does not always ease the sting. The truth is simple but heavy. No budget trick alone can erase the gap when costs climb faster than pay. Even the most careful planning bends under the weight of systemic pressure. This does not mean there is no hope. It means the story is bigger than personal failure. It means your stress is valid. It means your exhaustion makes sense. You sit with a cup of tea, staring at the bills. You breathe slowly and remind yourself that this squeeze is not forever. Systems shift, policies change, economies cycle. But while waiting for those shifts, what helps is giving yourself permission to rest. Permission to stop blaming yourself for tides you did not create. Permission to treat your stress with compassion, not criticism. It may feel small, but this shift matters. When you stop blaming yourself for systemic costs, you create space for calm. You still carry the bills, but you stop carrying shame with them. That difference lightens the load, even if only a little. And a little matters when life feels this heavy. As the night grows quiet, you let your body rest. The tide of costs will still be there in the morning, but tonight you can set the weight down. You are not failing for feeling broke. You are surviving in a time where the basics cost more than they should. That truth is enough to soften the harsh stories you tell yourself. The chapter closes with another question. Rising costs weigh you down. But what about the debts that already sit on your shoulders? What about the balances that never seem to shrink? The loans that follow you into every season? The interest that grows no matter how hard you work? That is where we will go next. The evening is quiet, but the desk in front of you feels heavy. A stack of envelopes sits there waiting to be opened. Student loan statements, credit card bills, a notice from the hospital about an old visit. You reach for one envelope, then pull your hand back. You know what it will say? More money owed, more dates to remember, more weight you are not sure how to carry. Debt feels like a backpack you cannot take off. You carry it to work, you carry it to bed. You carry it into conversations with friends, even when you do not mention it out loud. It sits in the back of your mind when you laugh, when you buy something small, when you make plans. It makes every choice feel heavier than it should. For many, student loans are the start of that weight. The average new graduate owes around $30,000. Some owe much more. That means years of income already belong to lenders before a first job even begins. Instead of feeling free after graduation, many feel chained to payments that stretch far into the future. What was once called an investment in yourself now feels like a lock on your choices. Credit card balances add another stone to the backpack. In America, the average balance for those who carry debt hovers around $10,000. Most of it does not come from luxuries. Surveys show nearly half of people with card debt used it for essentials like groceries, rent, and bills. That truth matters. Debt is not always about spending carelessly. Often it is about surviving when paychecks fall short. Yet the interest makes survival more expensive. You pay and pay, but the balance barely moves. Each month feels like running on a treadmill, moving your legs but staying in the same place. The emotional toll grows alongside the financial one. You feel exhausted, not only from working, but from the sense that progress never shows. Debt also changes how you see yourself. You may tell yourself, "I am bad with money," or "I will never get ahead." These thoughts are not facts. They are the stories, Shame writes, when numbers feel too large. The truth is that debt is common. The truth is that the system makes it easy to borrow, but hard to escape. The truth is that carrying debt does not define your worth. Think of how often debt shapes your daily choices. You hesitate to go out with friends because you know that money should go to payments. You hold back on dreams like starting a family or buying a home because the backpack feels too heavy. You work extra hours, not always because you want to, but because you fear falling further behind. Debt narrows your world. The weight of debt also affects health. Research links heavy debt to higher stress, anxiety, and even physical illness. The constant sense of owing creates a state of tension in the body. It explains why your shoulders feel tight, why sleep feels shallow, why your chest tightens when you think of the next payment. These are not weaknesses. They are natural responses to carrying too much for too long. But even with this weight, there are small truths that bring relief. One is that debt can be managed step by step. Some people start with the smallest balance, paying it off to feel a quick win, then rolling that energy into the next debt. Others focus on the highest interest first, knowing it saves the most money over time. Both paths are valid. What matters is momentum, not perfection. Another truth is that you are not alone in this burden. More than 40 million Americans carry student loans. Millions more carry medical debt or credit card balances. Some of them talk about it, most of them hide it. The silence makes you think you are the only one struggling, but the numbers prove otherwise. If the weight feels unbearable, it is because it is heavy, not because you are weak. Picture yourself placing one of those envelopes on the table and opening it slowly. You see the balance, but you remind yourself it is a number, not a sentence. You remind yourself you have faced challenges before. You remind yourself that small steps count. You take a breath. For the first time, the weight feels a little lighter, not because it is gone, but because you are no longer avoiding it. Debt may feel like a shadow that follows you everywhere, but shadows change with light. By looking at your debt instead of hiding it, you shine a light that softens its shape. By talking about it with someone you trust, you weaken the shame it carries. By making even a small payment, you show yourself that progress is possible. As the night deepens, the stack of envelopes remains. The balances remain, but something shifts inside you. You see the weight for what it is. Heavy, yes, but not endless. You are still moving forward, even if slowly. You are still learning, even while carrying the load. And you are still worthy of peace, even while paying off debt. This chapter ends with a question. If debt is a backpack many carry, what happens when an entire generation starts adulthood already wearing it? What happens when the weight is shared by millions who thought they were doing everything right, only to feel trapped from the start? That is where we will go next. The morning starts with a phone buzz. You glance at a message from a friend announcing they are postponing plans again. They wanted to save for a down payment, but now rent has gone up, groceries cost more, and the dream feels further away. You put the phone down and sigh. You know that story too well. It is the quiet story of a generation that did everything right but still feels stuck. Millennials and Gen Z grew up hearing the same advice. Study hard, go to college, get a good job, stability will follow. Many followed that path. They worked through school, took on loans, and walked into adulthood already carrying debt. They found jobs, but not always the ones they hoped for. Some entered the workforce during the Great Recession. Others faced the pandemic economy. Promises of stability met reality, and reality felt fragile. Studies show the financial well-being of millennials is lower than older generations at the same age. Nearly half of Gen Z report running out of money each month. More than a quarter of them feel especially stressed about student loans. Even high earners report living paycheck to paycheck. These numbers reveal what many already know in their hearts. The struggle is not about effort. It is about conditions that shifted under their feet. Debt is part of that story. Student loans were framed as a ticket to opportunity. Yet the average balance leaves new graduates owing tens of thousands before their careers even begin. That debt delays milestones. Buying a home, starting a family, building retirement savings. Instead of celebrating early adulthood, many spend it catching up. It feels like beginning a race miles behind the starting line. Housing is another part of the picture. Millennials and Gen Z face higher rents and home prices than their parents did. Even with stable jobs, saving for a down payment feels out of reach. Many stay with roommates longer. Some live with parents. The idea of a secure home, once considered normal, becomes a distant dream. This dissonance feeds frustration. It creates a quiet disillusionment with the story they were told. You sit across from a friend at a coffee shop. They stir their drink and admit they have delayed having children because the costs are overwhelming. You nod because you understand. Diapers, childcare, medical bills, all stacked on top of rent and loans. Choices about family are shaped not only by desire, but by dollars. It feels unfair, and the weight of that unfairness lingers. Financial stress is not just about numbers, it is about identity. When you believed adulthood meant stability, but stability never came, you question yourself. Did I do something wrong? Why do others seem further ahead? Social media makes the questions louder. Pictures of weddings, vacations, and new homes create constant comparisons. You scroll and wonder why you feel behind. What you do not see are the hidden debts and stresses beneath those posts. This generational struggle is bigger than individuals. It reflects economic shifts that reshaped expectations. Secure jobs with pensions became rare. Healthcare costs rose. Housing markets tightened. Education grew more expensive. The promises given to a younger generation did not match the reality they inherited. That mismatch explains the quiet sadness that often hides behind jokes about being broke. Still, within this disillusionment, there is resilience. Many millennials and Gen Z are redefining what success looks like. Some focus on side hustles or creative careers. Others prioritize experiences over possessions. Some choose community living, shared resources, or flexible lifestyles. These shifts show adaptation, even in the face of pressure. They reveal that while the system is heavy, people continue to carve new paths. You think of the conversations you have had with friends. Each one carries a similar thread. They want security. They want to feel safe. They want to stop living in fear of the next bill. These desires are simple, yet they feel out of reach. That gap between desire and reality is where disappointment grows. And yet, talking about it softens the burden. Sharing the story brings comfort. As the day ends, you sit with your own thoughts. You remember how hard you worked in school, how much you hoped for when you graduated, how different life feels now. The weight of that gap presses on your shoulders. But you also remember you are not carrying it alone. Millions are walking the same path, with the same questions, with the same frustrations. That truth matters. It turns isolation into connection. Generational debt is not only financial, it is emotional. It teaches people to lower expectations, to delay dreams, to carry constant stress. But naming it is the first step toward healing. Naming it reminds you that the problem is not you. The problem is the system. And systems can be changed, even if slowly. That hope is worth holding, even on heavy days. The chapter closes with another question. If so many carry this burden together, what happens when they begin to share it out loud? What happens when silence breaks, when people admit the truth, and when solidarity grows louder than shame? That is where we will go next. The evening hums softly. You sit on the couch, scrolling through your phone. Your feed is filled with the usual highlights: friends smiling at dinners, photos from trips, new clothes, new homes. Then you stop. A post catches your eye. Someone admits they are living paycheck to paycheck. They say they feel exhausted by bills and worry every night. The comments below are flooded with two words: me too. You pause and feel something shift inside. For a moment, the weight in your chest feels lighter. You realize your struggles are not hidden in silence. They are shared by many. You scroll further and see people admitting how they juggle bills, how they cut back on groceries, how they delay car repairs. The stories are different, but the theme is the same. The struggle is common. Surveys confirm what those comments reveal. 84% of Americans report some kind of financial stress. The most common triggers are basics: food, housing, and savings. Half of people worry about groceries. 4 in 10 worry about rent or mortgage. More than a third worry about having enough in savings. These numbers mean your worries are not strange. They are nearly universal. Even households that seem comfortable often feel squeezed. Studies show over 4 in 10 people earning more than $100,000 live paycheck to paycheck. That truth surprises many. It shows that money stress is not limited to low incomes. It crosses backgrounds, ages, and earnings. Knowing this helps reframe the story. You are not isolated. You are part of a wider chorus. You think back to work conversations. Maybe you have heard coworkers whisper about the rising cost of groceries. Someone joked about gas prices, but their laugh sounded tired. Another mentioned how daycare costs swallow half their paycheck. These small admissions are threads of connection. They show that under the surface, the danger of silence is that it makes you feel broken. When you think everyone else is fine, you assume you are failing. But the truth is that many people are quiet because money is still treated as private, almost taboo. That silence feeds shame. Breaking it brings relief. Hearing me turns isolation into solidarity. Imagine sitting with a trusted friend and admitting, "I feel like I can never get ahead." You expect judgment, but instead they nod. They say they feel the same. That moment becomes healing. To people once alone with their stress, now share it. The numbers in your bank account do not change, but the burden feels lighter. Solidarity does not erase the bills, but it eases the shame. You'll remember how secrecy made shame grow in earlier chapters. Now you see how honesty makes shame shrink. Naming the struggle aloud gives it less power. It becomes a shared experience rather than a hidden failure. This is why support groups, online communities, and honest conversations matter. They remind you that you are walking alongside millions. As you sit with this thought, notice how your body feels. When you think you are alone, your chest tightens. When you realize others are struggling too, your breath slows. The nervous system calms when it feels connected. Solidarity soothes not only the mind, but also the body. You are wired for connection, and even with money stress, that connection brings relief. Solidarity also sparks practical help. People share tips, resources, and encouragement. One person mentions a food pantry they visited. Another talks about a credit counselor who treated them with respect. Someone else shares how they built a small emergency fund by saving change. These small exchanges create collective wisdom. Alone you feel lost, but together you find paths. Think of history. Every generation has faced moments of hardship. In each communities leaned on one another. Families pooled resources, neighbors helped each other with meals. Friends shared rooms to ease rent. This spirit still exists, though quieter now. When people admit their struggles, that old rhythm of support returns. It reminds you that money stress is heavy, but no one is meant to carry it alone. You close your phone and look around your room. The bills are still there. The account balance is still small, but you feel less burdened because you know your story is not a secret tragedy. It is part of a wider pattern. You are not failing privately while others thrive. You are moving through the same storm as many. That truth is comforting. The chapter closes gently with another question. If solidarity lightens the shame, what about the myths that still blame individuals? What about the voices that insist being broke is only about poor choices or frivolous spending? How do you release yourself from those myths and see the truth more clearly? That is where we will go next. The kitchen is quiet, and you sit at the table with a relative who has seen many seasons of life. You admit softly, "I feel like I must be doing something wrong. No matter how much I work, I feel broke." You expect criticism, but instead, they smile gently and shake their head. It's not the coffee or the little treats. They say, "That's not why so many people struggle." For years, popular advice has repeated the same myth. If you stopped buying coffee, if you never ate out, if you cut every small pleasure, you would be fine. This story blames individuals for their struggles. It says financial pain is caused by frivolous choices, but the truth is far different. Research shows that debt often comes from paying for essentials: rent, food, utilities, medical bills. The coffee is not the problem. Survival costs are. Think of credit card balances. Nearly half of people with card debt say their balances grew from covering basic needs, not luxuries. Yet the myth of careless spending continues. It makes you feel guilty for a sandwich when your real challenge is rent rising faster than your income. It tells you to cut out joy while ignoring the fact that even without extras, many still fall short. Myths like these fuel shame instead of solving problems. Another myth says budgeting perfectly will fix everything. While a budget is helpful, it cannot stretch money that simply is not enough. Surveys show 37% of Americans would struggle to cover a $400 emergency. That is not because they all failed at budgeting. It is because their incomes do not leave room for savings. No spreadsheet can erase a gap that large. Believing this myth makes you feel like you failed, when the truth is that wages and costs do not align. A third myth says people are broke because they are lazy. Yet millions work long hours, some holding 2 or 3 jobs, and still live paycheck to paycheck. Working harder does not always create stability. The system of rising costs, debt burdens, and stagnant wages makes it difficult. This truth matters because it shifts the blame. Struggling is not a sign of weakness. It is evidence of how hard the climb has become. These myths linger because they are simple to believe. They offer a clear culprit: coffee, carelessness, laziness, when the real causes are complex and systemic. But simple myths cause harm. They silence people, making them feel ashamed to talk about real struggles. They make people blame themselves instead of recognizing the larger forces at work. The result is isolation instead of solidarity. As you sit with your relative, their words feel like a release. Your debt doesn't come from one coffee, they remind you. It comes from trying to keep up with the cost of living. It comes from systems that ask too much. You feel lighter hearing that truth spoken out loud. For the first time, you feel less like a failure and more like a person doing their best in difficult circumstances. The relief of debunking myths is not only emotional, it also opens space for real solutions. When you stop blaming yourself for small pleasures, you can focus on bigger steps. When you stop thinking a budget will magically solve everything, you can accept the need for gradual change. When you stop calling yourself lazy, you can see how much effort you already give. These shifts matter. They transform shame into compassion. Shame is a poor teacher. Compassion is a better one. When you treat yourself with kindness, you are more willing to look at the bills, to make a plan, to take small steps forward. Myths tell you to cut harder. Truth tells you to start gentler. Myths point fingers. Truth opens doors. Think of the relief in saying, "It is not my fault that rent rose again." Think of the comfort in saying, "I am not weak for needing credit when groceries cost more." These sentences are not excuses. They are acknowledgments of reality. From this place, you can plan without blame. You can choose without shame. You can move forward without the weight of myths dragging you back. You close your eyes for a moment and breathe. The sound of that gentle voice, your relative, your friend, or even your own inner wisdom lingers in your mind. It's not the lattes, it's life. You repeat it to yourself, not as a slogan, but as a truth you are ready to believe. The night feels a little lighter because myths no longer have the same power. They lose their grip when named. They lose their sting when challenged. You are left with the truth. Your struggles are real. Your effort matters. And you are not to blame for a system that asks too much. This chapter closes with a quiet question. If myths are not the answer, what is? If blame does not help, what small, gentle steps can break the cycle and bring relief? That is where we will go next. The weekend arrives, and you sit at the table with a cup of tea. A notebook rests nearby, but it is closed for now. You stare at the steam rising from the cup and think about the loop you have been living in. Work, bills, stress, repeat. The cycle feels endless. Yet somewhere inside, a small thought appears. What if the cycle does not need to break all at once? What if it could shift with one gentle step? You open the notebook and write a single word at the top of the page. Start, not fix, not finish, only start. You decide that today will not be about solving everything. Today will be about one action, one move, one moment of progress. You feel your shoulders soften as you accept that smaller is easier and easier is possible. One of the first gentle steps is saving a little, even when it feels too small to matter. Experts often suggest $500 as an initial goal. It may not cover every emergency, but it creates a cushion. You write down a plan to set aside even a few dollars a week. If you cook dinner at home once, instead of ordering out, you move that saved money into a jar or a separate account. You remind yourself that each dollar is proof of effort. Each dollar is a seed planted for the future. Debt is another place where gentle steps work. You list your balances, not to shame yourself, but to see them clearly. You choose the smallest debt and circle it. Paying a little extra here becomes a small victory. The debt snowball method calls this building momentum. Each small win creates energy for the next. You write down the first extra payment you will make, no matter how small. That choice shifts the story from "I am trapped" to "I am moving." Automation can also be a gentle friend. You set up a tiny transfer from checking to savings each payday. Even if it is only $10, it adds up over time. You also look at automating bill payments, reducing the mental weight of remembering dates. These tools do not solve everything, but they ease your mind. Less mental clutter means more calm, and more calm means more energy for healing. As you write these steps in your notebook, you notice something. The shame that once kept you from looking at your bills is quieter. The stress that said nothing will ever change is softer. The small steps prove that change is possible. Not dramatic change, not overnight, but slow, steady, real. That truth is enough to keep going. Gentle steps also include self-kindness. You decide to allow yourself small joys without guilt. A coffee with a friend, a quiet walk in the park, a book borrowed from the library. These joys remind you that life is not only bills and numbers, they give you strength to keep facing the harder parts. Denying all joy only leads to burnout. Allowing some joy brings balance. You think about how your body reacts to these small choices. When you avoided your bills, your chest felt tight. When you looked at them today and wrote a plan, your breath slowed. The nervous system responds to action, even tiny action. Each step tells your body, we are moving forward. That message creates calm. That calm helps you sleep. The tea cools, and the notebook fills with notes. None of them are grand, none of them fix everything, but together they form a path. Save a little, pay a little, auto-wait a little, allow joy, be kind, repeat. This rhythm feels manageable. It feels human. It feels like something you can keep. Later that night, you place a few dollars in a jar labeled emergency. You smile at the small amount, knowing it is the beginning of a cushion. You also make your first tiny extra payment on a card. You close your eyes and feel lighter, not because the debt is gone, but because you proved to yourself that movement is possible. That proof is powerful. Gentle steps create a new cycle. Instead of stress and avoidance, the cycle becomes awareness and action. Instead of shame and silence, the cycle becomes compassion and effort. Each round makes the path easier. Each small win strengthens your belief that you can change your story. As you rest, you think about tomorrow. The bills will still be there. The debt will still exist. But your relationship with them has shifted. They are no longer monsters in the dark. They are tasks you are addressing one by one. That shift is healing. That shift is hope. This chapter closes with another question. If gentle steps can change the way you face money, what happens when you face one of the hardest words of all, budget? What if a budget was not a punishment, but a tool for peace? That is where we will go next. The word sits heavy in your mind, budget. For years it sounded like a strict teacher scolding you. You imagined rows of numbers, rules that suffocate, and charts that tell you what you are doing wrong. Tonight, sitting at the table with your notebook, the word looks softer. You whisper it again to yourself, budget. Maybe this time, it can mean something different. Budgets often feel like punishment because they are used like restrictions. They tell you what you cannot do, what you cannot buy, where you cannot go. But a budget does not have to be a cage. At its heart, a budget is a plan. It is a way of giving every dollar a roll so that money works for you instead of against you. You pause and breathe. That does not sound like punishment. That sounds like care. You begin by writing down your income. The number looks plain on the page. Next, you list your needs: rent, groceries, utilities, debt payments. You draw a circle around them. These are non-negotiable. These are the foundations. Then you add wants, streaming, eating out, gifts. Finally, you add savings, even if the amount is small. You see the three categories: needs, wants, savings. Suddenly, the word budget looks less harsh. It looks like balance. Experts often share the 50-30-20ths idea. Half of income for needs, about a third for wants, and the rest for savings or debt. For many, the math does not work so cleanly. Rent alone might take more than half. But the idea is not about perfection. It is about giving shape to money, seeing where it goes, understanding the flow. You adjust the percentages to fit your life, not the other way around. You also add a new line to your plan: joy. A small amount set aside for something that brings comfort. A coffee with a friend, a streaming subscription, a book. This line matters. Without joy, budgets feel like chains. With joy, they feel human. A budget that ignores happiness will not last. A budget that includes happiness becomes a companion. As you write, you notice something. Fear softens when numbers are visible. Anxiety grows in the dark. Avoidance made the budget feel like a monster. Facing it makes it feel like a tool. You remember that night when you could not sleep, staring at your account balance. Tonight feels different. You are not staring at a glowing screen in panic. You are writing with intention. That difference is powerful. Budgets also give permission to breathe. When you know you have money set aside for groceries, you stop panicking at the store. When you know you have a line for fun, you stop feeling guilty for small joys. When you know savings is growing, even slowly, you sleep easier. The plan itself does not add money to your account, but it adds peace to your mind. You close your notebook and smile at the page. It is not perfect. It does not solve everything, but it feels doable. For the first time, the word budget feels kind. It feels like a flashlight, not a leash, a way to guide yourself through the month without tripping in the dark. That shift changes the story. Budgets are living tools. They can change when your life changes. They can bend when emergencies happen. They can stretch when extra income arrives. They are not stone tablets carved with judgment. They are flexible guides. Understanding this brings freedom. You do not have to follow someone else's perfect model. You only have to build one that fits your life gently. You pour another cup of tea and look again at your page. For the first time, you do not feel dread. You feel calm. The numbers are still what they are, but they no longer control you in silence. You are choosing where they go. That choice feels like control, but also like care. Care for your present, care for your future, care for your peace. The night grows quiet, and you prepare to rest. The word budget, once sharp, now feels softer on your tongue. You whisper it one more time. Budget. This time it feels like kindness. This chapter closes with a gentle question. If a budget can bring clarity, what about knowledge itself? What happens when you begin to understand money in ways you were never taught? That is where we will go next. The room is quiet, and you sit with a book from the library. The title is about personal finance. You never thought you would pick something like this up, but tonight feels different. You open the first page and read slowly. The words are simple, yet each one feels like a lantern turning on in a dark hallway. For the first time, the unknown about money begins to fade. Most people were never taught how to handle money. Schools rarely explained credit cards, interest, or loans. Families often stayed silent. You entered adulthood with big responsibilities but little guidance. That gap created fear. It made every term sound like a threat. But tonight, learning feels different. The soft light of understanding begins to calm the fear. You start with credit scores. You read that they are like report cards for borrowing, based on payment history, balances, and time. You learn that paying bills on time matters more than perfection. You realize that using too much of your credit limit makes lenders nervous, but keeping usage low builds trust. The mystery shrinks. What once felt like a secret code now looks like steps you can follow. Next, you read about savings. Experts suggest building an emergency fund as a cushion. Even a small amount, like $500, creates peace. You nod because you remember the jar you started in earlier chapters. That jar now feels like more than coins. It feels like protection. It proves that saving is not about wealth. It is about safety. The book explains that small, steady deposits matter more than rare big ones. You smile. That feels manageable. Then you turn to income. The book says your paycheck is not only for survival, it is also a tool for building your future. It encourages setting aside money for retirement, even if it is small. You read about employer matches, about accounts that grow with time, about compounding. At first, the terms seem heavy, but the explanation is simple. Start small, let it grow, trust the process. You breathe easier knowing you do not need to know everything at once. Each section of the book feels like another rope tied across a river. With each rope, the crossing feels safer. You are no longer dangling over the unknown. You have something to hold on to. Learning is not overwhelming tonight. It is soothing, because each piece of knowledge replaces fear with clarity, and clarity feels restful. You put the book down and look around your room. You realize that what kept you stuck was not laziness. It was the silence around money. That silence made you think you were failing, when in truth, you were simply uninformed. Knowledge breaks the silence. It shows you that financial skills are learned, not born. You can learn them gently, one step at a time. Later that night, you open your phone and watch a short video about budgeting apps. The voice explains how to track expenses. It looks simple, even friendly. You download one and try entering a few purchases. Seeing them organized feels calming. Instead of floating around your head, the numbers now sit neatly on the screen. You feel relief, knowing you can check without fear. The truth is clear. Money stops being a monster when you understand it. Fear feeds on mystery. Learning removes the mystery. Each new fact, each new term, each new tool is a light on the path. You do not need to master everything. You only need to learn enough to quiet the fear. That is enough to make sleep come easier. You think of your younger self, stepping into adulthood without these tools. You wish someone had explained it then, but you smile because you are learning now. It is never too late to add lanterns to the hallway. Each step forward is still progress. Each rope tied is still strength. The night deepens and you close your eyes. You remind yourself, I am learning. I am allowed to learn slowly. I am not broken for not knowing before. My story is still being written. This chapter closes with another question. If learning brings clarity, what happens when you find support beyond yourself? What changes when you reach out to another voice, a guide, a partner, or a professional who can share the weight? That is where we will go next. The cafe is quiet, except for the gentle hum of voices and the clink of cups. You sit at a small table, hands wrapped around a warm drink. Across from you is a friend you trust. For weeks, you carry the weight of your money worries alone. Today, you decide to share. You speak softly. I feel like I can never get ahead. You wait for judgment, but it does not come. Your friend nods and says, I know the feeling. That moment changes something inside you. What once felt like a secret shame now feels like a shared burden. The weight is not gone, but it is lighter. Talking aloud removes some of the power silence held. You realize that support is not only about solutions. Sometimes it is about being heard. Sometimes it is about someone looking at you and saying, me too. Support can take many forms. It might be a friend who listens without judgment. It might be a partner who sits down with you to review bills together. It might be a family member who admits their own struggles and offers to brainstorm. Each form matters. Each one reminds you that you are not meant to carry everything alone. Connection softens the load. Professional guidance is another kind of support. Financial counselors, credit advisors, or planners are trained to look at the numbers without shame. They see balances and bills not as proof of failure, but as puzzles to solve. Studies show that people who work with advisors often feel stronger about their finances. More than 3/4 of them describe their situation as secure. Support turns confusion into clarity. Even if professional help feels out of reach, many communities offer free or low-cost services. Nonprofits, local banks, and credit unions often provide guidance. Hotlines exist for people facing debt. These resources exist quietly, waiting for people to ask. The first step is the hardest, saying out loud, "I need help." Yet once spoken, the relief is immediate. You think of couples who argue about money. The stress turns into blame, the silence into distance. But when partners sit together, admit fears, and look at the numbers side by side, something changes. The problem becomes ours instead of yours. The fight softens into teamwork. Even when the numbers are still heavy, the connection brings peace. To people facing one challenge feels stronger than one person carrying it in silence. Support also appears in unexpected places. Online forums where strangers share their journeys, community groups where people trade stories and resources. A coworker who admits they feel the same stress. Every time someone speaks, the silence cracks. Every time you listen, shame shrinks. Sharing does not fix the bills, but it fixes the feeling of being broken. That shift is healing. You reflect on your own life. Times when you felt most alone were not always when the numbers were worst. They were when you kept the numbers hidden. Times when you felt stronger were not always when money flowed easily. They were when you spoke the truth and let others stand beside you. The pattern is clear. Isolation grows shame. Connection grows strength. The body knows this too. When you speak honestly to someone safe, your chest loosens, your breath deepens, your pulse slows. The nervous system calms when it feels supported. This is why sharing matters. It is not only about practical advice, it is about regulating your body, giving your mind space to rest. You feel safer in connection than in silence. Support does not erase responsibility. You still face bills, you still decide on actions, but with help, decisions feel less terrifying. Someone guiding you through a budget makes the numbers clearer. A friend encouraging you makes the steps feel smaller. An advisor giving perspective helps you see options you missed. Alone, the maze feels endless. Together, the path appears. Later that night, you lie in bed replaying the conversation at the cafe. You remember the moment your friend said, "I know the feeling." Those words echo softly in your mind. They are proof that your struggle is not a private failure. They are proof that support exists. They are proof that connection heals. You smile and close your eyes, breathing easier. This chapter closes with a gentle question. If connection brings support, what happens when you shift the very way you measure money? What happens when you stop chasing endless success and begin redefining what enough truly means? That is where we will go next. The evening air is cool as you walk slowly through a nearby park. Children laugh on the swings. A couple shares food on a blanket. A man reads quietly under a tree. None of them look wealthy. None of them are showing off. Yet you notice how much peace fills the scene. You pause and wonder, if they can look content, what does enough really mean for me? For so long, you chased someone else's version of success. Ads told you that you needed bigger houses, newer cars, and more possessions. Social media showed endless feeds of vacations, gadgets, and carefully staged smiles. The message repeated itself daily. What you have is not enough. Without noticing, you absorbed that story. It shaped how you measured yourself. But tonight, you question it. Because even when you bought new things, the feeling of fullness faded quickly. Even when you reached a goal, another goal appeared. The finish line always moved further. Chasing more never brought calm. Instead, it brought exhaustion. You realize that if the goal is endless, the race never ends. That truth explains the tiredness you carry. Studies show that after basic needs are met, more money does not always bring more happiness. People who focus only on possessions often report more stress, not less. On the other hand, those who focus on experiences, relationships, and health often feel richer, even with fewer things. The meaning of enough is not a fixed number. It is a feeling of safety and satisfaction. You sit on a bench and think about your own life. What do you truly need to feel safe? A roof overhead, food on the table, people you trust by your side. Maybe a little cushion in the bank to breathe easier. Beyond that, much of what you once thought you needed was taught by others. Their version of success was not designed for your peace. It was designed to sell you more. This realization softens something inside. You do not need to prove worth through endless upgrades. You do not need to compare your path to every post online. You do not need to measure yourself by what you do not yet have. Enough can be smaller. Enough can be simpler. Enough can be defined by you, not by the world around you. You think of a teacher once who said, "Contentment is not the same as giving up. It is choosing to stop fighting when you already have what matters." Those words return tonight. They feel softer than the endless chase. They remind you that enough is not about lowering your life. It is about raising your awareness of what already brings peace. In your mind, you begin to list what you are grateful for. A warm meal earlier, a friend who listened, a safe space to rest tonight. Gratitude shifts focus from scarcity to abundance. It highlights what exists rather than what is missing. This is not about ignoring real struggles. It is about remembering that even in struggle, pockets of abundance remain. Gratitude journals are often suggested by therapists for this reason. Writing down 3 simple things each day has been shown to reduce stress and increase well-being. You consider trying it, not as another chore, but as a ritual before bed. A way to remind yourself that enough is already here in small ways. A way to quiet the voice that says you are always behind. The more you sit with the idea of enough, the lighter you feel. It no longer sounds like settling. It sounds like freedom. Freedom from comparisons. Freedom from endless spending. Freedom from shame. Enough means you can pause, breathe, and enjoy what you already hold. Enough means you can choose rest without guilt. You walk home from the park under the soft glow of streetlights. Each step feels calmer. You whisper to yourself, "I do not need everything. I need enough, and enough is possible." Those words feel like a lullaby, soothing the tired parts of you that always reached for more. At home, you write the word enough on a piece of paper and tape it to the wall near your desk. You decide to look at it whenever stress about money rises. You want it to remind you that peace is not only in future goals, peace can live in present acceptance. That acceptance does not mean you stop growing. It means you grow with less fear. This chapter closes with a question. If redefining enough brings freedom, what happens when you also begin to nurture a mindset of abundance, believing that growth and peace can coexist? What happens when scarcity is no longer the only story, and a new story of possibility begins? That is where we will go next. The morning is quiet. You stand by a small windowsill where a plant grows in a simple pot. A few weeks ago, the leaves looked weak. You gave it water, a bit of sunlight, and time. Now new shoots appear. Looking at it, you realize your financial life feels similar. For years, you told yourself nothing would grow. But with care, patience, and new habits, small signs of abundance begin to show. Scarcity told you that money would always run out. It whispered that every dollar would vanish, that security was impossible, that tomorrow would always be worse. Living under that belief drained your energy. It made you focus only on what was missing. It left little space for hope. But tonight, you are learning to soften that story. You are beginning to believe that more is possible, even if slowly. An abundance mindset is not about pretending you are wealthy. It is about shifting focus. Instead of seeing only what is lacking, you notice what is growing. Instead of focusing on the debt left to pay, you celebrate the payment you already made. Instead of stressing over the small savings, you feel gratitude that savings exists at all. These shifts seem small, but they build a stronger foundation for change. Think of the debt payment you made earlier in the story. Scarcity said, "It is not enough." Abundance says, "It is proof of movement." Scarcity said, "Your savings jar is too small." Abundance says, "It is the beginning of safety." Scarcity drains hope. Abundance feeds it. That difference shapes the way you act, the way you rest, and the way you see your future. Research shows that people who focus on gratitude and small wins report less stress and more confidence with money. The facts are clear. Optimism creates energy. That energy encourages action. Action builds progress. Progress creates more optimism. The cycle becomes healthy. What once felt like a vicious loop of scarcity becomes a gentle loop of abundance. You walk through your home and notice the small victories. The lights are on because you paid the bill. Dinner is cooking because you bought groceries. A few dollars sit safely in your savings jar. Each of these is abundance. Each of these is proof that you are caring for yourself. Seeing abundance in daily life turns survival into dignity and dignity into peace. Abundance also means giving yourself permission to dream. Scarcity shuts down dreams. It says they are too expensive, too far away, too impossible. Abundance says dreams can be approached one step at a time. Maybe it is a vacation saved slowly, a class taken for growth, or a goal like home ownership. Abundance does not promise instant results. It promises that effort matters, that steps add up, that the future can hold more than fear. You think back to nights when you could not sleep, when shame filled your chest, when the bills looked like monsters. Tonight feels softer. You still have bills, but you also have progress. You still have debts, but you also have small wins. Abundance allows both truths to exist. It does not deny challenges. It reminds you that even within challenge, there is growth. The windowsill plant is proof. It did not grow overnight. It grew through steady care. Some days, it looked the same. Then suddenly, one day a new leaf appeared. Your financial healing is the same. Small steps repeated create sudden moments of change. You may not notice day by day, but in time you will look back and see growth. Abundance also changes how you treat yourself. Scarcity said you are failing. Abundance says you are learning. Scarcity said you are behind. Abundance says you are moving. Scarcity made you fearful. Abundance makes you patient. These gentle reframes matter because the way you speak to yourself shapes the way you act. Kindness creates progress. As the night deepens, you sit quietly with this thought. Abundance is not a bank balance, it is a mindset. It is the choice to see what is present, to celebrate what is growing, and to believe in the possibility of more. With each breath, you let scarcity loosen its grip and let abundance fill the space. This chapter closes with one final question. If you can move from scarcity to abundance in your daily story, how do you end the journey at night with true peace? What does it look like to rest fully, knowing your worth is greater than your wallet? That is where we will go next. The night is calm and you are lying in bed. The lights are dim, the air is quiet, and your body feels heavy against the sheets. You think back over the journey you have taken in these chapters, the worries of midnight, the shame of bills, the shadow of scarcity, the rising costs, the debts, and the disillusionment of a generation. Each chapter held a piece of your story. Each one reminded you that your struggles are real and your feelings make sense. You also remember the soft turns, the moments when the weight began to shift. Solidarity when others said, "Me too," relief when myths about money were debunked. The gentle steps you wrote in your notebook, the softer meaning of a budget, the lanterns of knowledge that replaced fear with clarity, the connection with others that made the load lighter, the redefinition of enough, and finally, the quiet shift into abundance. Each moment was a thread woven into a new fabric of peace. Rest is part of resilience. Resilience is not about pushing harder every day. It is about allowing yourself to bend, to pause, to recover. Tonight, you are practicing resilience by lying here, letting your body settle, and reminding yourself that rest is not wasted time. Rest is healing. Rest is strength. Rest is the foundation for the choices you will make tomorrow. Think of how far you have come, not in dollars, but in perspective. At the beginning, money felt like an enemy that followed you into the night. Now it feels more like a companion, something you are learning to understand, something you can shape with patience. The numbers have not all changed, but the story has. And stories are what give meaning to numbers. You whisper to yourself, "I am more than my wallet. I am more than my bills. I am worthy of peace." These words are not empty, they are reminders. They calm the voice of shame. They soften the weight of fear. They invite your nervous system to rest. They remind you that your journey with money is not only about survival, but also about healing. The truth is that financial challenges may still come. Bills will still arrive. Costs may still rise. But you now carry tools and truths. You know that shame does not help. You know that myths are not true. You know that small steps matter. You know that connection heals. You know that abundance can be nurtured. These truths are anchors you can return to when the tide feels high again. As your eyes grow heavier, imagine yourself standing on a shore. Behind you is the storm of scarcity, shame, and fear. Ahead of you is calmer water. You step forward, holding the truths you learned, and let the waves soften around you. Each step feels steadier. Each breath feels deeper. You are not rushing. You are resting into the rhythm of your own resilience. Tomorrow will bring choices, some easy, some hard. But tonight, you have earned peace. Tonight, you have shown yourself compassion. Tonight, you have built resilience by resting in the truth that you are more than the numbers on a page. You are a whole person with dignity, with value, with a story still unfolding. This journey closes with a soft invitation. When money worries rise again, return to these chapters in your mind. Remember that midnight worries are common. Remember that shame grows in silence but shrinks in connection. Remember that small steps change cycles. Remember that enough is a definition you are free to choose. And remember that abundance is possible, even in small ways, every day. So breathe deeply now. Let your chest rise and fall in steady rhythm. Let your shoulders sink into the mattress. Let your mind slow its spinning. You have done enough for today. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to feel peace tonight, even if everything is not solved. And tomorrow, when you wake, you will carry with you a little more calm, a little more clarity, a little more strength. Your story with money will continue, but it will not always be heavy. You have shown yourself resilience, and that resilience will guide you forward. This chapter and this journey close with one last truth. You are still learning. You are still growing, and that is enough. The night is deep, and your body feels heavier against the bed. You have traveled far in this story. From the restless midnight of empty wallets to the softer dawn of abundance, you have walked through the feelings, the fears, and the truths about money that so many carry but rarely name. At the start, you felt the sharp weight of scarcity, the sleepless nights, the unopened bills, the heavy debts, the rising costs that made survival feel like swimming against a tide. You faced the disillusionment of a generation that followed every rule, yet still feels behind. These were the shadows that once followed you into bed and kept your chest tight. But as you continued, the story shifted. You found solidarity when others whispered "me too." You learned the myths that blamed you were never true. You began to write gentle steps in your notebook, saving small amounts, paying down balances little by little, and adding joy into your plan without guilt. It made peace with a budget by turning it from a punishment into a guide. You picked up the ropes of knowledge, adding lanterns of understanding to the dark hallway of financial confusion. You remembered the relief of leaning on others, whether a trusted friend, a partner, or a professional voice. You redefined what enough means in your life, realizing that your worth is not measured by endless upgrades or comparisons. And finally, you nurtured an abundance mindset, one that celebrates progress, honors resilience, and allows space for dreams. Each chapter was not about quick fixes. It was about truth and compassion. Truth that the system is heavy. Truth that shame thrives in silence. Truth that millions share the same struggles. And compassion that reminds you small steps are valid, rest is valuable, and peace is possible. These truths are the foundation for a new way of living with money. As you lie here now, notice how your body feels compared to the beginning. Your breath is slower. Your shoulders are softer. Your mind is quieter. The worries have not disappeared, but their grip has loosened. The story you carry is no longer one of failure. It is one of resilience, learning, and healing. Remember these gentle takeaways. You are not broken for feeling broke. Bills and balances are numbers, not judgments. Shame grows in silence, but shrinks when spoken. Small steps count more than perfect plans. Joy belongs in your budget. Knowledge is a lantern, not a burden. Support is strength, not weakness. Enough is defined by you, and abundance is nurtured in gratitude and patience. Repeat these truths to yourself as often as needed. They are not slogans. They are reminders that money is part of life, but not the measure of your life. Your worth has never lived in your wallet. It lives in your heart, your actions, your care for others, and your willingness to keep going even when the journey feels heavy. Tonight, give yourself full permission to rest. Bills can wait until morning. Plans can continue tomorrow. Right now, rest is the wisest action you can take. Rest calms your body, restores your mind, and builds resilience for the days ahead. Rest is not avoidance. Rest is strength. So breathe deeply. Inhale calm, exhale the shame. Inhale compassion, exhale the fear. With each breath, let your body sink deeper into comfort. Let your thoughts fade into softer shapes. Let your eyes grow heavier. You have made space tonight for clarity. You have given yourself kindness. You have allowed yourself to learn without pressure. That alone is progress. That alone is enough. As sleep comes, remember this. Tomorrow, you may face new challenges, but you will also carry new tools. A notebook with small steps, a budget that feels like care, a jar with the start of savings, a heart that knows enough is possible, and a mind that believes abundance is not only for others, but for you too. So rest now. Rest knowing that your story with money is still being written, and you are allowed to write it gently. Rest knowing that peace is not waiting at some distant finish line. Peace is available tonight, in your breath, in your body, in your choice to close your eyes. Tonight, maybe you can forgive yourself for not knowing what no one ever taught you. Tonight, maybe you can stop proving and simply rest. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, you will remember that your story with money is still unfolding, and it is allowed to be beautiful. Good night, sleep peacefully. You are safe, you are worthy, you are enough.